My name is Frances Johnson Darger, and I was one of 5 daughters. Mother was a wonderful opera singer, and she insisted that all of her daughters play an instrument, and she was a very dear friend of Melba Lindsay Burton. So she said to Mrs. Burton, if you teach my children to play the violin, I will teach your children how to sing. She also was a very dear friend of Frank Asper's at the McCune School of Music, and he was also a tabernacle organist. And he had an orchestra, so she had us all go play in his orchestra. And that's when I just fell in love with orchestra music. I never wanted to be a soloist, I just loved orchestra music. When I was 17, the fledgling Utah Symphony had been going for, they say, since 1940, so this was 1942. They needed people, and so I had an audition and joined and started playing with the Utah Symphony in the summer of 1942. They had these wonderful summer festivals, 2 or 3 concerts, and then had a series in the fall. And of course they had 5 or 6 concerts. I was looking at a list I had, and I think we made $6.25 a concert. I mean, not a concert, a rehearsal, and we made like $37.50 a week, I think. And it was, the season was very short. It always finished in time to take a ski trip in March. I played in the symphony for 2 years, and then my sisters and I decided it would be fun to go to California and see if we could make our fame and fortune as a swing group. So, you know, foolishly, we went off to California. I was, 19? Julie and Janice were 17. Afton and Peggy lived down there a little while, so we went down, and the 5 of us lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, had one little car between the 5 of us, and we found a gentleman that kind of was helping us. He got us at a little radio show. We had about 5 performances on the radio show. And we sang at the Hollywood Canteen. And I have a thank you note from Betty Davis for singing at the Hollywood Canteen.
So this is about 1944?
This is 44.
1944.
45. It was right during the war,
Yeah.
in the middle of the war. And of course the war ended the spring of 45. And we had taken the world by storm completely by then, so our cute mother and father said, come on, you girls need to come back and finish your college education. When I returned from Los Angeles, I went back to the symphony. They very graciously took me in. They still needed lots, all the men were still off to the war, so I was still needed. They had a bunch of guest conductors, a lot of guest conductors. Some of the concerts were conducted by Hans Henny, who was stationed out at Kearns. They brought in Sir Thomas Beecham 2 or 3 times, and that was a magnificent. So at that point, they hired Darling Abravanel, Mrs. Wallace and whatever committee was went to New York and hired Abravanel to come out. So when he came, basically his job was quite difficult. We used to have an 18-week season, and when Jansen came, he upped it to 20 weeks. But when Abravanel came, he had to take it back to 18 weeks because of the money that they had. He was a big friend of Kurt Weill's. And he'd been at the Metropolitan. He conducted at the Metropolitan. So I really think he realized this was a golden opportunity to have his own orchestra. And more power to him, you know. He came out to the Wild West and took what was here and started in. So when he, as I said before, my cute little piece of paper, when we first started out, it was an 18-week winter season. It was $37.50 a week with 6 services a week. So when Jansen was here, they took it up to 20 weeks, and that was $50 a week. So when Abravanel came, they took it back to 18 weeks, back to the $37.50 a week. And then Abravanel, to his credit, tried to up the weeks, up the money the whole time he was here. He got into the community like you just can't believe. He knew everybody. He befriended everybody. He did a beautiful job he bought a house here, lived here all winter long, and just was here, you know, he took us all over the state. He played in schools that nobody had ever played before with a symphony concert. He took us everywhere. Abravanel was always trying to get the support of the legislature. You know, they used to send symphony people up to say, please, we need to go and see everybody around the state. So many of the legislators said they would give us some money if we would go to every school district in a 3-year period. And Abravanel had one gentleman that said, I will help you get some money if you will come to Loa. which is in the middle of the state, and Abravanel said, we will go to Loa. So we did. We went down to this little tiny town of Loa, and I think we played it with, I don't know if it was a church, what the room was, but all the little children came in with their chairs. There were more people in our concert than I think lived in Loa. They just came from all over. Yeah. It was one of the most exciting concerts we've ever played. Abravanel was darling with him. He loved to play in the hinterland, basically, and to play for people that never got to hear symphonic music. So that was a treat to do that. Brought in wonderful soloists.
Yeah.
His array of soloists were unbelievable. And every person you've ever heard of, he managed eventually to bring them all in. Jack Benny, you know, he not only brought the great, wonderful classical artists, he brought in jazz artists. He just, you know, brought in all kinds of wonderful people. He loved to play what everybody loved to hear. He played very audience-friendly things. Although one year he did decide that maybe we should have a series of contemporary music. So we did. He had a series, the whole series. You knew what you were getting. You knew you were getting contemporary music, and that was fun. We did that at Kingsbury Hall. Remember one concert they were banging garbage cans. And there were a few wild concerts. No, he was unbelievable. And I look at the numbers of the weeks as the weeks progressed and the money progressed. He really was, his whole goal was to build it up and to keep it going, which he did. We had 8 international tours with the symphony. My very favorite, of course, was the first one, when he went to Greece in 1966. You know, for a young lady in Salt Lake to sit there at the base of the Acropolis and to look up at the wonderful ruins up on top and to play down below for the royal family. The royal family was there. That was a treat. The second tour was went to Washington D.C. Played in Constitution Hall, and then we went to the Caribbean, and then we went to all over South America, and that was 5 weeks, and that was a thrill. 75, we played in England and Scotland. That was a treat. Then in 77, we went back to Greece. Played in Austria, Germany, and Spain. 79, we went to Hawaii, played in Hawaii. It was an exchange with the Hawaii Symphony, as I remember. 1981, we went to Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Norway, and Greece. I mean, the trips have been just unbelievable. Yeah, that was an interesting trip. The 7th trip, we went back to a lot in Germany, Dresden, Zagreb, Leipzig, Ljubljana.
And that was Silverstein?
And that was, so it had to be Silverstein.
So about 86, wasn't it?
86, that was 86. And then the last one, then from 86, it got very difficult, very expensive to tour. But finally, while Keith was here, we went to Europe in 05. And that was fun. We went to Germany and Austria and Berlin. That was a treat. Abravanel had much charm, as we all know, and he was not really thrilled when ladies got pregnant. He was not too thrilled about that. One year I went skiing and I broke my shoulder. And I came home one day and there was a message on the machine, and I wish I had saved it. Francis, we don't get pregnant, we don't take sick leave, and we don't go skiing. My favorite story about Abravanel and Symphony Hall is he became acquainted with Cyril Harris, who was an acoustician. I think he's at New York University or somewhere. And he'd done a lot of wonderful halls. And he went to him and he said, we want to build a new hall in Salt Lake City. Would you come and design a hall for us acoustically? And from what I understand, Harris said, there's no such thing as a perfect hall for the symphony and the opera and the ballet. You go and find an old theater in Salt Lake. We will remodel that for this opera and the ballet, and we will build you a lovely symphony hall. And that's what they did. Well, of course, it opened in 1979, and of course, since Abravanel couldn't do it, they needed to bring in somebody, and so they brought in Stanislas Skrovichevsky. I finally learned how to pronounce his name, and he was a joy. I thoroughly enjoyed him. They brought him back 15 years later, 10 or 15 years later, and he was marvelous. I just remember looking at it as it was being built. My neighbor John Price was the one that was the contractor on it, and they really put their heart and soul into it. They really tried to make it wonderful. I remember they had the Symphony Guild come down. When they put the chandeliers in, and all the ladies of the Symphony Guild would shine all the crystals of the chandeliers. I went down, they handed you white gloves and a rope and a cloth, and you cleaned all those chandeliers. So every time I look at those chandeliers, I think I helped clean those chandeliers. I just fell in love with orchestra music. I never wanted to be a soloist. I just loved orchestra music. So it was a joy and a pleasure.